Hi, welcome back to The Balancing Act. And this is a question I know a lot of parents out there are asking. How can you help protect your children from destructive influences? Well, here today to discuss this important subject and to share their story are Sue Sheff, author of this book right here. It's called Wits End, Advice and Resources for Saving Your Out-of-Control Teen, and Kristen E. Stadel, who as a teen herself experienced a similar situation as Sue's daughters. Ladies, thank you so much for being here with us. This is such an important topic because I know for you, you were a single mom raising your daughter by herself, and then she started to get out of control. And you did what you thought you needed to do, was to put her into a residential treatment facility, but that's when things even went downhill even more. Tell us about that.
Well, they escalated, yes. What happened was, I had a really good teen. I mean, she was a good kid, and she was a gymnast. And what happened was, she broke her foot in 5 different places and couldn't compete gymnastic in her field any longer, and it totally blew her self-esteem. And I always said that we pretty much lived in like a glass house, and when that glass house shattered, she didn't know what to do with herself anymore, and it really it destroyed her, I think, emotionally. And then to compound it, we were going through some personal issues at home with a relationship that I was in. So I think I lost touch a little bit with her during a time that she probably needed me most. But before I chose to send her to a therapeutic boarding school, I did exhaust every local resource, which I always encourage parents, you know, whether it's therapy or going to live with a relative or getting any type of help you can find.
And you know, I think what's interesting about this is, and I'm sure now when you look back, you can see the signs. You see the signs were there, but when you're going through it, and I think this is something a lot of parents out there probably don't realize, is when you're going through it, you think it may be just normal teenage behavior to some degree, right?
Well, a lot of it you say is typical teen. This is a typical teen. This, and then you hit that parent denial mark. And when you hit that parent denial mark, that can be dangerous, because that's when things can start to escalate. And that's when you start saying, well, it's not really her, it's the friend she's hanging out with. I think another important issue, I'm sorry, that you need to stress here is being a single parent doesn't isolate the situation. I mean, this happens in nuclear families, the mother and father, and you just have this one child that all of a sudden is making some really bad choices, whether it's picking a bad peer group or just wanting to fit in. If there was a death of a friend or a family, and all of a sudden you see a personality change. I have parents that call me on constantly in emails, you don't understand, my child's so smart, he's 96th percentile and was on the football varsity team, and then all of a sudden, smoking pot, smoking cigarettes, just out of the blue.
Well, here's the interesting thing, Kristen. I know you went through some similar troubles. Tell us about your story and what got you into a treatment facility and why that probably wasn't the best move for you initially.
Well, the reason that I was put in these places was when I was 14. My mother passed away from ovarian cancer, and we were very close. And then my dad and I were complete opposites. We didn't know one another really, in a way. Even though we lived together, we were like in shock. And we didn't know how to deal with one another, and we were fighting, and I was going through depression as he was as well. And so he, in order to deal with the situation, he sent me away to these places.
When you say in order to deal with the situation, Kristen, how bad did it get?
How
bad at home, and how bad did your behavior get?
My behavior, as far as I remember it was more of a depression that I was going through. It wasn't that I was, out there doing drugs or, being wild and crazy. It was just deep depression for me, and anger because of the depression, and just having a really hard time, not knowing how to deal with it, and just struggling out there. So.
And how bad did it get for Ashlyn?
That's pretty much like with Ashlyn. When she lost her gymnastics, her Olympic dream, I mean, that was her dream, was to make nationals and go on to the Olympic. And she had been accepted into the national gym, and she was actually commuting, flying home on weekends, living, at the gym in Orlando. And when her dream just burst, and like Kristen, she was left in a state of depression, I think. And I think I don't know Kristen's father, but I know we get to a point where we're at our wits' end, and you don't know where to turn, and you don't know who to reach out to. So you go to the so-called experts in the field of trying to find these programs. But what happens is they usually direct you to a lot of times therapists don't know of therapeutic boarding schools and residential treatment centers, and they refer you sometimes to these educational consultants, which I had attempted to, and I don't think Kristen's father tried too. And the first thing they always recommend is these quote-unquote wilderness programs, which in my opinion are more or less like a boot camp in breaking a child down. And one thing I knew about Ashlyn, and probably Kristen too, is these kids were already broken down. They didn't need to be broken any further. So I did not go the wilderness route, and I further did research online to try to find another avenue for Ashlyn. Kristen's father went the wilderness route, and it wasn't. Yeah, and it wasn't.
You say unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why unfortunately?
Well, I mean, I had depression and anxiety, and being out in the mountains hiking for 60-something days, not being able to shower for like 2 weeks at a time.
Limited food, right?
Very limited food, and always the same thing, and very just plain. I mean, just stripped of everything. No, I mean, even things from deodorant to the kind of toothpaste we were allowed to use and the things we were allowed to do. It was just like a total shock. Like, what do you mean I can't take a shower? What do you mean I can't even use deodorant? I mean,
Right.
and that made me feel disgusting.
These kids are already down. They're low enough, and that's why they're acting out. To where these negative impulsivities are stemming from is this low self-worth. And then you put them into a situation that breaks them down even further. It can only really make a child feel worse.
But here's the thing, and I think you'll agree, a lot of parents do this because they think they're doing the right thing for their child. What are some alternatives? What can parents do if they're faced with a similar situation you were with Ashlyn and Kristen? What can parents do to ensure that their children are going to the right place that will give them the help they need?
Well, in my book, which is Wits End, part 2 of Wits End is all about helping educate a parent to find a safe and healthy alternative boarding residential therapy boarding school. My organization that I created because of my own experience back in 2001, Parents Universal Resource Experts, which if you go online is helpyourteens.com, is all about educating the parent on how to find these healthy programs. Number one, if your child likes some type of whether it's equestrian or culinary arts or skiing, snowboarding, try to find a school that offers that, because we want to build your child back up again. We don't want to break them down. We don't want to punish your child. We don't want a program that's punitive. I have parents that call me on a daily basis and email me on a daily basis. I need a good boot camp. No, you don't, because the boot camps are only going to instill more anger and build more resentment. And these are just things that when you are at your wit's end and you're desperate and you start making these rash decisions, you think, I'm going to teach my child. And I thought the same thing. I'm going to teach her a lesson. It doesn't teach her a lesson. It teaches you, the parent, a lesson.
I know there are a lot of parents out there who are going through exactly what you've gone through, a lot of teenagers going through exactly what you've gone through. Where can people go to find out more information?
My website, which is www.helpyourteens.com, has a vast amount of information and helpful hints on finding safe alternatives. It also helps parents determine whether this is a step that they actually need to take.
Okay. And Kristen?
I have a website which is www.itsallgoodbookonline.com.
Okay.
And it's about my book that I'm in the process of writing through my experiences and what I've learned, and to give inspiration to others in the same situation.
Because it's all good now, huh?
Yep.
All right, ladies, thank you very much. We do appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, coming up next, our nutrition expert, Dr. Janice Brill, gives us some great tips on eating healthy while on the go.